In a bold response to escalating trade tensions with the United States, Ontario has announced a significant 25% increase in electricity export taxes, directly affecting power supplied to 1.5 million American homes.
In the shadow of Niagara's roaring cascades and the steady glow of streetlights stretching from Buffalo's snowy avenues to Windsor's factory hum, a transborder lifeline has turned into a lightning rod. On March 10, 2025, Ontario Premier Doug Ford flipped a switch that sent shockwaves south, a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the United States, tacking an extra $7 per megawatt-hour onto the clean hydro and nuclear power that illuminates 1.5 million American homes each year. This isn't a random jolt. It's a calculated counterstrike against President Donald Trump's February tariffs, a 25% wall on Canadian steel, aluminum, and lumber that's bled billions from Ontario's economic arteries. As Michigan families crank thermostats against winter's bite and New York's grid groans under peak loads, Ford's hike briefly imposed for a single day before a diplomatic pause, but looming as a reimposable threat, could zap $200 million annually from U.S. says. Utility bills, a hidden tax flickering through every light switch and furnace. Ontario's dams and reactors feed 10 to 15% of the Northeast and Midwest's imported power, a low-carbon lifeline slashing 5 million tons of American emissions yearly, with Ford's blunt vow ringing like a blown fuse. If they want to play games, we'll turn off the lights. Is this a fleeting blackout bluff to force a tariff truce, or the spark that could short-circuit a decades-old grid woven by shared rivers and mutual need? To track the current, let's follow the wire to where the sparks ignited. The roots of this electric escalation arc back to a trade war that's been charging since Trump's January 2025 return to the White House, his America First mantra reborn with a vengeance. On February 1, executive orders slammed 25% tariffs on nearly all Canadian and Mexican goods, sparing oil and energy to skirt USMCA rules, but hammering Ontario's steel mills, auto plants, and sawmills with a $2 billion steel sector wound alone. Canada and Mexico fired back with $20 billion in counter tariffs on U.S. whiskey, motorcycles, and dairy. But Ford, Ontario's pugnacious premier, saw a sharper weapon: the province's sprawling power grid, a 27,000-kilometer network pumping 20 to 30 terawatt-hours southward each year, 10% of its total output. This isn't a sideline stream. It's a baseload backbone, rooted in the 1950s Niagara Treaty that split the Falls Force for mutual gain, delivering cheap green electrons to U.S. states hooked on Ontario's hydro and nuclear mix. Deals like the 2020 New York-Ontario Clean Energy Pact locked in bargain rates, undercutting dirtier American coal plants and anchoring emissions cuts. But Trump's March 9 threat to crank tariffs to 35%, blaming Canada for fentanyl flows and lax borders, lit Ford's fuse. At a Toronto press conference, he thundered, "Ontario is prepared to add a 25% surcharge to the electricity we export to their states if President Trump's tariffs remain in place." Rolled out March 11 through the Independent Electricity System Operators Market, it stung for a single day, netting $260,000 before a U.S. Commerce Department plea paused it. Yet Ford's July musings: everything's on the table. Keep the threat humming, especially as Prime Minister Mark Carney preps for his October 7 White House showdown with Trump. In a world where power lines don't respect borders, Ontario's prod exposes the paradox. The U.S. pays Canada to soak up surplus electrons at times, but one province's lever can dim a dozen American dreams. Zoom into the policy's wiring, and it's a precision jolt, not a crude blackout bomb. Launched March 11, or poised to return if tariffs persist, the 25% surcharge spikes export bids in Ontario's real-time electricity market, adding roughly $7 per megawatt-hour atop a $9.50 Canadian baseline. No full cutoff. Exemptions shield emergency trades and short-term surges, honoring North American Electric Reliability Corporation rules to keep grids humming. The targets? 3 U.S. states tethered tightest to Ontario's grid: New York, drawing 20% of its imports from the province; Michigan at 15%, Minnesota at 10%, flows pulsing through Hydro One lines from Niagara's roar to the Upper Peninsula's quiet. Duration? Indefinite. tethered to tariff relief, with winter's 30% heating spikes amplifying the pain. Mechanically, it's an auction uplift. Ontario generators bid higher for cross-border slots, passing the premium south without flipping a breaker. Ford's CNN quip cut deep. We'll shut it off completely if needed. Legally, it tiptoes along USMCA's energy chapter, a proportional retort that skirts outright bans but invites scrutiny from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for straining fair and open flows. Picture the ledger, a 25% hike, no hard cutoff, emergency carve-outs, Niagara's dams, and Darlington's reactors as the juice. It's a calculated current designed to sting wallets without plunging cities into darkness, yet potent enough to siphon $150 to $200 million yearly from American utilities. As Ontario's market dashboard pulses, it's clear this is economic arm twisting, voltage as vengeance in a trade war wired for escalation. The fallout ripples like a tripped circuit, dimming not just meters, but the daily rhythms of millions across state lines. The surcharge's annual toll, $150 to $200 million, translates to $5 to $10 monthly per household in the crosshairs. 1 million homes in New York, 500,000 in Michigan, 300,000 in Minnesota, where winter heating gobbles 50% of bills. No blackouts loom. America's patchwork of gas, coal, and renewables cushions the blow, but the hike spikes costs at the worst time, with January peaks pushing rates 20 to 30% higher. For Ontario, it's a revenue spark, $100 million funneled to grid upgrades, battery banks, and nuclear refits at Darlington, easing domestic rates battered by 2024's heat waves. Wider waves lap at policy. New York's 2030 goal of 70% renewables leans on Ontario's 20% hydro slice, now pricier, nudging USE. Inflation up 1/10 of a point as utilities pass the pain. Humanize the hit. In Buffalo, where Ontario electrons light 40% of winter nights, retiree Ellen Kowalski eyes her national grid bill, creeping $7 higher, sighing over tea. Their neighbors, why make us pay for their fight? In Sarnia, hydro workers toast Ford's flex, but no shared grids mean shared scars. Windsor's auto lines, stung by tariffs, hum on US Power 2. A silver lining flickers. The March suspension, after Commerce's hasty huddle, thawed steel duties by April, proving Power's pull in trade talks. Yet, as October's frost looms and tariff talks falter, the surcharge's shadow reimposition whispers from July's standoff darkens budgets, a reminder that in integrated grids, one tug ripples ruin both ways. The backlash buzzes like a live wire, crackling across borders with outrage, bravado, and diplomatic dance. Stateside, tempers flare. New York Governor Kathy Hochul decries it as reckless escalation, her team scrambling for Quebec's cheaper flows to offset the 20% import reliance. Michigan's senators, led by Debbie Stabenow, demand a federal probe, warning of rate shock for families already stretched thin, while Minnesota's utilities peg a $30 million annual hit in a fiery FERC filing. Trump, ever theatrical, muses a power emergency for border states on Truth Social. Canada's playing blackout roulette time to pull the plug on their games. Northward, Ford leans in with populist panache. Fair fight. Ontario ratepayers come first. His Instagram reel of spinning turbines captioned, "Lights on for us, surcharge for them," racking 500,000 views. Ottawa's Liberals tread lighter. Carney calls it proportional pressure, but talks are the true transformer. While Hydro One's CEO cheers the cash for strategic grid bets, X erupts in a digital storm. Power cut trends with 15,000 posts, US users snarling. Canada's torching our bills. Beside memes of Trump groping for candles, countered by Canadian jabs. Payback's a blackout. Trade cuts both ways. A Rochester nurse's viral post laments, "Love my Ontario pals, but this hike's dimming my shift." EU diplomats eye the fray, wary of USMCA fractures spilling into transatlantic green deals. Satire stings. Late-night hosts dub it Ford's shock therapy. But polls show grit. 60% of Ontarians back the bite, seeing it as tariff tonic. Yet as Carney's October 7 Trump summit nears, the chorus crescendos, defiance fuels diplomacy, but outrage begs for de-escalation before winter's dark deepens. Peel back the sparks, and the surcharge shines as less blackout bluff than breaking point beacon, a calculated current with lessons wired into every watt. For Ontario, it's a bright spot. $100 million in revenue powers, the 2025-2030 grid plan, 10 gigawatts of storage, modular reactors, while pressuring Trump's tariff tower, echoing the 2018 steel truce forged in 3 months of mutual sting. It bears leverage lost in rhetoric, energy's proportional jab fits, USMCA without severing ties, forcing Washington to weigh heartland hikes against border bluster. Shadows loom, retaliation risks, FERC penalties, or U.S. pivots to Mexican solar could erode Ontario's 15% import crown. It strains the integrated market's seams, tested by 2024's heat domes, and hastens U.S. diversification. New York's battery surge, Michigan's wind farms chipping Canada's edge. Analysts frame it crisp, symbolic sting, not systemic shock. It bears the fragility of our fused fates. The 2026 USMCA review looms, where energy clauses could ban surcharges or bless them as balance. Looking ahead, IESO auctions pulse on, suspension holds unless tariffs lift. But Carney's Tuesday talks could recalibrate tariff cuts for power peace? In this wattage waltz, the surcharge teaches a truth. Tug one wire in a shared grid, and the whole circuit hums with consequence. Bluff or not, it lights the path to packs rewired. As frost kisses transmission towers and October's chill whispers of winter's wait, Ontario's 25% power hike, paused but poised, stands as a stark signal. In trade wars, the currents we lean on flow through common conduits, fragile as frost underfoot. Not a full blackout, but a blazing reminder of vulnerability, where one day's jolt netted thousands and a season's could cost millions. Will Carney's White House wager tomorrow yield tariff-tempered harmony, or will reimposed rates ratchet the rift, dimming homes from Marquette to Manhattan? North America's grid is no mere network. It's a nervous system, where one province's prod pulses pain across a dozen states. Which wire wins? Retaliation's raw charge, or reconciliation's steady glow? Drop your spark below. Subscribe for the trade storm's next surge. Amid the meters and mandates, one truth transmits clear. Power shared sustains. Power played with shorts the soul of a continent.